Good evening. Welcome back to Eating the Elephant, where we talk about insurance topics. We talk about eating the elephant that is Hurricane Michael recovery, and we break it into bite-sized pieces for you. I appreciate everybody's forbearance that we missed last night. As I mentioned in a post on Facebook earlier, my daughter came home from college. I was pretty excited to see her, and it was her birthday. And I got to say, I'm very proud. She did very, very well her first year at University of Florida. As a lifelong Seminole, it's still hard to say that, but I am still proud of her. I want to get right to it tonight. There's been an awful lot of pause because it seems to me like everybody now geared up toward we're getting things paid for. We're working on contractors, and credibility seems to be a bigger and bigger issue. It seems to me at this point in the process of recovery that, frankly, this is where the grind is. This is where, when people really have trouble with credibility, with a contractor misbehaving, with an insurance company not paying as they should, with a public adjuster ignoring them, this is when it really begins to affect people. And this is when it sort of seems like everybody is meeting at the same place. You're going to go on Facebook and get an awful lot of advice. I think what is really key for all of us now is you really, more than any other time in this process, really need to consider your sources. I've said this before. I think the first thing you need to consider when you're asking for advice on Facebook or on another social media site or even in the news is you need to look at the credibility of the source. Part of that is looking at the profit motive of the source that you're getting your information from. If they volunteer their help, that's fantastic. I love to see free help. But if they're looking to eventually extract money from you, that's something that you need to be very wary of. And it's not to say that you shouldn't accept free help with people or from people that have expertise that you need, but you need to weigh their credibility against what they might want to get from you in profit at some point. I will say this, that I think we do need to give locals a little bit more of a break than some people from out of town. And it's not to say that we don't need help from people from out of town. And I'll say that I think I do have some sympathy for people that come here and help us. That said, it is very difficult for someone from out of town to instantly gain credibility. The people that are here are going to have to live with the results of what happens for a very long time. And people that are in business here are going to have to live with what they tell you. And I will grant you, the people that are here, the contractors, any other person that is going to provide you a service, there's not enough of us. There's just not enough people to do all that needs to be done. So we do need some help from outside. But I do think you need to weigh that against the long-term possibilities. If someone is a taillight contractor and they tell you a good tale and then they leave, you're stuck. If someone here locally tells you a tale that they can't fulfill a promise, then they're going to have to live with that. So what I would say is, if they're from out of town, I think you should dig a little bit deeper. If they're from in town, you should hold them to their promises. I think it's just become a little difficult these days because everybody is buried. Everybody that's in business, either from out of town or here that is local, we're all covered up. Everybody that is doing business here has all they can handle. So it's gotten very frustrating for many of us. If you are trying to get anything from, well, we got donuts today. That's fantastic. That all of a sudden we have Krispy Kreme. And you have businesses opening day by day by day, but there are some things that you can't get done still. Trying to get a car fixed in this town is a nightmare. There are very few dry cleaners, as an example. Someone sent me a message about getting your shoes fixed. There are some things that you just can't quite get, so let's hold people accountable. I know this sounds a little bit silly at this point, but hold the locals accountable and be a little more cautious. Let's do some investigative work for people that are coming here from out of town. Always when somebody gives you advice or tells you something that you should be doing, I think you should look at their expertise, their history. You should investigate it, but you should also look at their profit motive and make sure that they're not looking to you to pay them something or have your insurance company pay them something. Excuse me. We've had some other issues come up in the past few days that are a little bit troubling. We've had some accusations of bullying, intimidation. We've had contractors misbehaving. And it's unique that we're in a situation where people are very confused. We're all in a situation we've not found ourselves in before. So many of us reach out for help. And what we do is we reach out for people that have a certain expertise. Maybe they have legal expertise or construction expertise, insurance expertise. And I think it's very important that we find people that know more about this situation than we do. I'm certainly doing that. I know an awful lot about what's going on now. Excuse me. And I still seek help from other people that have certain skill sets that I don't possess. I've talked to attorneys. I've talked to public adjusters. I've talked to estimators. I've talked to people that have done this before, that have done storm work before. I take what they say with a grain of salt to some degree, because some, frankly, are profiteers. They're storm chasers. We've seen enough taillight contractors. We've seen enough bus bench attorneys. But the people that have that skill set, that are willing to behave honorably, we need those people here. So it's up to us as the locals to separate the wheat from the chaff. It's very important that you work very, very hard and spend a little bit of extra time trying to decide who is who. And their profit motive is something that you can often use as something to distinguish between the two. When you see things online about these folks, or when you see things on review sites, on Facebook, on social media, one of the things I think you should look at is how they respond to criticism. People get compliments online, people get criticism online. There's lots more criticism, I think, than compliments. And frankly, for the purposes of analysis, I think you can mostly ignore the good news. I think you should focus on the bad. And the way I say this, and the way I relate this to people is, if someone is criticized as a business person or a service provider, a vendor online, look at how they respond to that. And there are certain ways that you should respond and certain ways that should absolutely be red flags. If people try to maintain their cool, if people remain professional in their response to criticism, if they accept it, maybe acknowledge it, certainly in some cases they should be apologetic, I think that's something you should consider. So when somebody is in a stressful situation, for instance, a business person taking criticism, you should look at that and how they respond to that stressful situation, respond to that criticism, and see if they handle it with a cool head, or if they try to blame the person that is criticizing them, if they try to avoid a responsibility for the problem. I think those are indicators of whether you can trust that person or not. Finally, I want to get into some mechanics of where we are in the storm recovery process. And I think everybody that is still waiting for service of any kind, if you're waiting on your insurance company, you've got to be so frustrated by now. If your insurance company has not responded to you, you've got to be pulling your hair out. If you're waiting on your contractor, if they're working but they haven't been finished yet, then you're probably maybe a little annoyed, maybe a little frustrated. You want to get back to your house, but you're probably okay. If your contractor has not been responsive, if they dropped off materials 2 months ago and they still haven't gotten back to you, if they're not returning your phone calls, if your public adjuster, is an example, isn't returning phone calls and is just leaving you out to dry. If you're in those situations, you can be very frustrated. I will say this: if your insurance company at this point has not been responsive, if they are ignoring your phone calls, and if you don't have a significant amount of money, if you don't have, let's say, more than half of the money that you're entitled to, I would prefer that everyone be paid out right now. But if you don't have a significant portion of the money that you feel like you're entitled to in this process, you have a couple of choices. Early on in the process, I suggested escalating. We talked about the process of how you escalate a situation, how you advocate for yourself, how you can mediate the situation. I think the advocate part is still very viable. If you're waiting for your adjuster to call you back, that's not a good move. You still need to stay on the phone. You still need to be engaged. particularly now when you may have changed an adjuster 2 or 3 or 4 times. You need to stay on the phone. You need to call people. You can't wait for people to get back to you. However, if things are not going the way they should go, at this point in the situation, we're more than 6 months out. I think most of us are in a position where if there is no movement whatsoever, if you have gotten no money, if you've gotten nowhere, it is time to pull the trigger for the big dogs. I've got to say it is time for nuclear weapons. I don't think it's the point anymore where you can engage the state of Florida, the Department of Financial Services. They've been very effective to this point, but if nothing has happened till now, I don't know that they're the way to go. And I don't think a public adjuster is going to be effective for you at this point either. I think now's the time. You have to go directly to an attorney. Now, having said that, I think you need to be especially careful about who you hire. I talked about bus bench attorneys earlier. If you see a sign in someone's yard or on the corner of 23rd Street and Beck Avenue, or if you see them on the side of a bus, that's probably not the people you want to call. What you want to do to find an attorney is you want to talk to some people that you trust, that have had good results, that understand what attorneys do and don't do, and I think you should engage them. You should call, and when you talk to somebody, you should trust your gut. Just because they're nice to you doesn't mean they're going to be effective. You should ask really good questions, as you would with any professional, and ask what they're going to do for you and how they're going to improve your situation. Ask them about tactics, where they're going to go, what they're going to do. And I have to say that if you just feel queasy with the answers you get, move along. Go to the next person. There are lots of options out there for you, and you should get the best option for you. Again, I'm sorry that we had a delay one day today. It was a good excuse for me. I hope it was an effective. I hope it was viable for you guys. If you have questions, I will say this. Please send them to me in the next couple of days. I'm going to be out of pocket a good bit next week. We'll be back at you Sunday, of course, as usual, and then we're going to miss next Wednesday. So if you have specific questions, specific concerns, please let me know. We'll be glad to get back to you. But the next week, we're going to take a little bit of a break. Hope you have a good week. I look forward to everybody having a good, pretty weekend, and we'll talk to you on Sunday. Thanks.